Hello, fellow homebrewers. JP here, and I want to introduce to you the brand new Brew-Built X1 Conical Series available at More Beer. More Beer sells the highest standard in homebrewing equipment, and the Brew-Built Conicals are just that. They're made from mirror-polished 304 stainless steel, and they come with loads of features that you and I have been looking for. They have a full 2-inch bottom dump valve, which will eliminate your clogging issues, while the sturdy base includes 4 reinforced legs, just like those big Pro tanks do. More Beer also carries the Brew-Built line of options and add-ons like casters, pressure kits, and even external glycol chillers. So you can find out more about the new Brew-Built X1 Conical Unitanks by going over to morebeer.com for detailed videos on the entire line of Brew-Built Conicals. You can trust Brew-Built with your next fermentation, and you can trust More Beer to find the right conical for you. Brew-Built at morebeer.com.
Great beer is about drinkability. Doesn't matter the style.
You guys are like walking beer Wikipedia.
That's the first time that you've ever accepted me as a person.
Or you have a fermentation in your gut.
I'm jet propelled at all times.
How many guys do you think that you have the privilege to slap?
Somebody who's never tasted a commercial example, and this is how you know everything about this beer? Please, you don't.
I think that's bullshit.
I think it's bullshit too.
Wow. Are you guys going to arm wrestle?
No.
They're going to teabag fight instead.
Yeah. You heard of Junkyard Wars?
Can I get another high five, Beavis?
Now, live from the Brewing Network studios in Northern California, this is the radio program for home brewers, craft brewers, beer lovers, and beer geeks. It's your only source for live beer radio that brings expert brewers together with, well, expert drinkers. This is the radio program with a head on it. This is The Session.
Hey everybody, welcome to the show. It's The Session, and today we have a very special guest, the one and only Christopher Randall Graham from a little homebrew shop you might know as morebeer.com. Chris, welcome to the show, my friend.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's been a while.
Now, you are not a professional brewery, which is normally what we do here, but, you know, for those of you tuning in for the last year or so, we are started from homebrewers. We are all homebrewers here, and I wanted to get Chris on the line here to talk about what is going on in homebrewing in general, because I sure as hell don't know. There's a lot of resurgence in homebrew. There's a lot of interest in homebrewing, so I do want to talk to him about that, but before we jump into that, Chris and his business partner Olin did a really cool thing. They brewed outdoors, and that's all I really know. I don't know anything more about it because just already that concept is foreign to me. Going outside, I just don't. I've never even heard of what that. I don't even know the definition of that. So I want to talk to you, Chris, a little bit about that, about your hike, about brewing outdoors, and how you did it, because I think it is something that's pretty interesting. I know you guys have done it before, or at least Olin has. You chickened out, I think, is the story in the last time. And and I want to share that with everybody and see maybe someone else wants to do it too, exactly how you guys did it, or maybe you can give them a jumping off point, any hikers out there. So let's just get into it, man. What did you guys do? Where did you brew?
Well, we brewed at the highest altitude in the lower 48 states. We brewed on top of Mount Whitney at 14,505 feet.
Wow. Where is Mount Whitney? I feel like I've never heard of it.
It's in California, Jason.
I mean, I'm lying a little bit. Like, we used to try to, like, I know the Boy Scouts, when I was in Scouts, we used to have, like, oh, this troop is climbing Whitney or whatever, like doing some. I was like, I don't want to.
So when we went to the desert and brewed, you were there.
I was there.
A great picture from that.
Yeah.
And we drove kind of by it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's Lone Pine, Bishop, any of those like inland cities in California. Those are all kind of like feeder areas that people go before they hike up.
Oh, okay. All right. To find their Sherpas or whatever. I imagine it's a grueling. Okay.
Exactly.
I think I would rather go to the lowest point into the Death Valley, where we did the Death Valley, than climb.
Did you use the internet when you found out about the Death Valley?
I really did. The wireless Fi is really what I do about it. Well, that's cool. So, and Olin and I think Regan did it before, right?
Yeah, no. So it was August of '98 that they did it. And back then, the internet wasn't so powerful. So there was this email group, was it HBD, and it was a daily digest of emails that would go out.
Wow, I forgot about that.
And there was some people from Colorado like, hey, we're going up to this 14, they call them 14ers. We're going up to this 14er and brew, like we'll be way up here. So then a bunch of Californians, mainly Olin and this guy Mike down in Southern California, are like, well, we have Mount Whitney. We have the highest peak. So let's plan a trip. So they did. And a bunch of people said they were going to go. And quickly, as soon as they learned that they actually had to exert energy, that big group narrowed down to 4 of them.
Yeah.
Regan being one of them. And interesting to say is I'm now pretty much the age Regan was.
No.
Shocked me. Yeah, that's what Olin told me. I'm like, no, that can't be.
Wow.
He was ridden hard and put away wet, Jason.
Yeah,
so it's a little
true.
different.
Yeah, he's very moldy. He got that's weird to me, man, because I was working there about that time. Or maybe a little bit after.
You were about 2 years after. So it was 98 when I first started. I quit my job, heading down from Boise, Idaho. And while I'm doing that and I get into town, Olin and Regan have taken off for the weekend to go brew down in Whitney. So there's this girl telling me what to do all around the homebrew shop. And you can only guess who that is. And
telling you what to do is
welcome to more beer.
Yeah, wow, it sounds oddly familiar. Telling you what to do is pretty accurate. Well, and that's what I mean. Like even then, when I joined 99, 2000. Regan was already like in his late 80s. So, I mean, that man will like stand the test of time. You know what I mean? It will be the cockroaches, plastic in the ocean, and then Regan sitting somewhere figuring out how to fashion a coconut into like some of companionship.
Him and Keith Richards will be hanging out.
That's true. He'll be teaching Keith a thing or two. Well, so you missed out your chance the first time. How did you get up to go about getting back up there?
So when we hit the 25th anniversary, we were just talking about just different ideas of fun things to do. We did some stuff internally that was fun for employees and such. We did some giveaways as a company to customers and had some fun there. It was during COVID, so it was a little weird that way, but had to celebrate nonetheless. But one of the things we're like, hey, we should redo this brew. I just kind of said, yeah, well, and that sounds great. Let me know when it's going to happen. And I know to go on Whitney, you have to enter a lottery, and they only choose the lottery winners once a year. And you put in like 3 sets of dates and so forth and so on. So last February, he's like, hey, we won the lottery. We're going to climb Mount Whitney. And I'm like, yay?
Yeah, you won the lottery. We're climbing Mount Whitney. Oh,
and for those of you who don't know, my business partner Olin is in fantastic shape. He's a year and a half older than me, something like that, but is in twice as good a shape as I am. Has a Peloton, both a bike and a runner, and he and I then go to the gym once in a while at lunch here. And if I don't go, he still goes anyway. And I'm a dad. Well, he's a dad too, but
It's funny because every excuse you could make to not being in shape, Olin just sort of ticks those boxes anyway. But that's just Olin, like super competitive in like a really positive way, not like an angry competitor, but just like a very positive, like goal oriented competitor. And he's like, it sounds like he's just never lost his edge.
No, and so it's like, hey, we're going to be going in. What was it? August or something like that. I'm like, oh, okay, it's February. Like, I don't even own hiking boots. And how is this going to happen? And all of that good jazz.
That's exactly what I would wonder about too, because I've been on a couple long hikes. I did like a 50 miler in Scouts, and it was tough, man. And that shit was brutal. But I had the luxury of training for, quote unquote training, like walking 10 miles in one day distance, like training. But on this hike, I forget what it was, but it was, we did a mile, the hell was it? Yeah, a mile, 1,000 feet of elevation in a mile. So it's like just 45 degree, switchbacks, and you're like, you can't train for that. So how do you train for something going up 14,000 feet, hauling equipment that you don't need to be brewing?
In order to brew.
Right.
So I start reading like, what's this hike? Just going on the interwebs and looking up hiking Mount Whitney. And, you start to learn like, okay, there's multiple ways to go. You can go the John Muir way. You can go the traditional way, blah, blah, blah. And I start reading. I'm like, Olin, what do we have the permit for? He's like, oh, just the cool, I don't want to say easy because it's not easy, but the base one that everyone wants to do. And that is you pull into Whitney Portal, and a lot of people will leave at 4 a.m. and just do it in one day. That way they don't have to wear much of a pack. Okay. And you're kind of up and down on the same day. You're hiking 22 miles or something like that day, and going at a brutal altitude change, but you don't have to wear a big heavy pack. You don't have to sleep, tents and all that. So we're looking at that, but we're saying like, okay, we're going to do that hike. We're going to camp at what they call high camp. And that way we can leave the tent, sleeping bags, cookware, anything like that we don't need for brewing there, go up the next morning, brew, then come back and either decide to pack it all in and hike down or spend another night and hike down. Either way, you're talking a 2, maybe 3 day trip at best.
Okay.
22 miles. Even I can do that.
Easy.
Yeah. So I buy a pair of hiking boots on Amazon, the greatest place to buy hiking boots. But we're in like peak COVID. Like it's nothing easy to get to or go into around here. And so I wear the hiking boots the first day, and I get blisters the first day. And I'm wearing the hiking boots here at work. Like
I was going to say, you didn't break them in, but it's not okay. So you got blisters the first day from trying to break them in.
Exactly.
Okay. All right.
And I'm like, I haven't actually at that point. I hadn't. This is going to sound really bad. I hadn't worn shoes like to work for a long periods of time that actually have these things called laces on them for several years.
Okay.
Everything's slipping. I'm getting old.
You're a Velcro man. I get it. That's cool. You are turning into Regan.
And so it's like, my feet weren't quite used to ankle support. And like, that's where I really got most of the chafing and such. Anyway, long story short, those broke in a few days.
Yeah.
And those were pretty good. So that was my main training was that.
Was walking. And, all right.
And we're like 2 weeks away from the trip. And Olin's like, well, we should probably train. I'm like, okay. So at lunch, we start doing a 2-mile hike here or there, like New Melones State Park and stuff like that. And then he goes away for a week for a family trip up to Tahoe. I'm like, that bastard, he's up at elevation. He's, probably having fun outside. I'm sitting here at work. But I start going, well, we should probably be a little more prepared. So we have the brew room here. So I'm like, let's make a test batch. So I read all the old docs that they had on what they did. And I say docs, it's still on our website, of Brewing on Mount Whitney. And it's a plastic bucket. And I'm like, well, we got to kind of step it up a notch and go with a little more modern. So I brew 3 or 4 times. Well, I set out to brew once, but it takes me a few times to get started when I realize, you're not bringing a Camp Chef cooker. You're not bringing like a 20-pound propane tank.
Sure.
So head over to REI, buy some camping based stoves and such. And so I start brewing and finally I get it to where I do a gallon batch. And, pretty cool. Got the times down, trying to keep it short. And the big reason for that is you don't want to be on the peak of that mountain very long. Storms come through like unpredicted. And if lightning hits, you better get the heck out of there quick.
Okay.
So trying to get it to a 2-hour brew day. That's my goal. And I know that's not, a traditional time, but I don't know if you remember, Jason, when Olin first had kids, he started in order to keep brewing, he started experimenting with 15-minute mash times and what's the efficiency different, 20-minute boils and what's the flavor profile like and such. And so I took some of those wins from that and said yes, you need more grain, but you could do a 20-minute mash and still get good, decent enough efficiency and such. So built the whole thing, had it all down, so I could set timers because I was just going to be relaxed and clear-minded after I climbed up there. And
oh yeah, absolutely. Nothing to worry about. Yeah, for sure.
But at least I wrote it down on a checklist, blah, 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 blah. And then I rented, Sports Basement has this cool deal where you can rent backpacks and all this stuff. Because I'm like, I'm not going to go spend thousands of dollars for this one hike. Right. You can rent everything you need for the most part in terms of backpacks, bear bags or bear bins and sleeping bags and tents and all that for like $200.
That's pretty good, but the thought of a rented sleeping bag bothers me.
Oh, come on. During COVID, just get in there and rub your face a little bit.
I still have my sleeping bag that I had in Scouts doing my 50-miler.
I bet you had your pillowcase with you, too.
Well,
So got that like lined up and rented. Olin gets back from his trip. He's like, we got that trip next week. We better get ready. I'm like, dude, I've been like stressing out about this. So I start going over like, okay, here's what I've got prepared. He's like, oh, okay, we're looking pretty good. Then we get into to print the permit and find out everything we need to do. And because you go through recreation.gov to do this. It's not like its own system. And unfortunately, they had like some weird error message. And so we call up and they're like, oh, yeah, your lottery's canceled.
Whoa.
And we're like, can we know why? And I don't know that we fully know why yet. And that's, or ever will, but that's fine. But anyway, we're like, well, and Nolan's like, well, we did a lot of plans. The guy's like, okay, there are other ways to go. Look up online Cottonwood Lakes. And you can hike in from that way. And you don't need this special permit. You need a permit, but you don't need this special one to go through. So
okay.
We both start going through and learning about it. And we set it up and we're like, oh, thank God. So we set it out a few weeks. And this way now we can really plan and start training. And we started doing that on the weekends. But it's you go from a 20-mile hike to a minimum of 40-mile hike.
Oh.
So it definitely changes the dynamics of what you're going to be doing.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, mentally too.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Can I handle this? I'm reading these stories, and I guess altitude sickness is like seasickness, and that it's like it's not like a sign of manliness or not if you are or not. It's like my dad sailed for years, and then we get randomly seasick once in a while, and it's like that just happens.
Yeah.
And altitude sickness is like that too. This one guide who'd brought up, 30 or 40 times had brought people up to the top of Mount Whitney, only got altitude sickness twice, but it's like it can happen to anyone at any time. So I'm, put that in the back of the brain.
For sure.
You're just worried about things you can't control.
Right. When did you become like me?
As we get closer, we do the right things. We make a dock. We start like, okay, what do we need? How are we going to do this? What's the route we're going to take? And we were able to get our wilderness permits for those areas and those camping spots. And you think they're going to be like camping spots, like where we're used to camping.
Mm-hmm.
So that's all the planning stuff. But now we're going to be going this like new route, and with new routes are new opportunities. And Ola and I both like fly fishing or love fly fishing. And so one of the things we were looking at these lakes, and they're above 11,000 feet. And the California state fish is the golden trout. And they only live above 11,000 feet. And they happen to live in those lakes.
Oh, okay.
So we start going, well, we got to bring fly rods and
you got to do it.
And then as you get closer and closer, I took all my brewing stuff and I started weighing them on a gram scale and writing the weight on everything, going, that's way too much. You start cutting down on things, and I don't need 2 lighters. One is just fine. That stainless stirring spoon's way too heavy, because you start figuring out like how much this backpack's going to weigh, how much this is going to weigh, how much is that going to weigh.
And it all adds up very quickly.
It adds up very quickly. And then throw in a fly rod, a reel, some flies, some extra gear, you want to have enough. So we're like, cool. That's like the new awesomeness that we get to explore this trip as opposed to prior trips. And this trip, we're kind of going in the way John Muir went up to Mount Whitney all those years ago.
With a fly rod and a white gas stove and a...
Oh, well, yeah. And state-of-the-art backpacks and whatnot.
Well, no, that is cool because it does sort of make you slow down and enjoy the trip rather than let's bust it to get up there, do the thing, and then we got to get back because we both have stuff to do.
Exactly. And it's funny because when we first were doing the other trip, it was like, well, on Sunday is my last day I can get home because I got these things with the kids and him the same. And like, it became this, like, we just got to hammer this out. We're going to brew, hammer it out, and get home. And this, we're like, no. Now we're fishing. And
now it's a vacation.
Yeah. Oh, no.
Well,
we're working, Jason.
Well,
my wife might listen to this show.
Amy, it was a working vacation.
It all comes way too quick. We're working, we're doing our regular things. We're trying to run this business and trying to take care of our people and customers. And we're still in COVID, and we're still like an office that used to have 40 some odd people in it now has 2 of us. And I still have VPN servers and everything that everyone's working at home. So the IT department is going on top of Mount Whitney.
Which is always, I feel, a good thing. You put your eggs in one basket and then put that basket in a campground for 4 days.
Well, and
I feel like that's good.
Cell coverage, and apparently there is about this much through most of it.
Oh, okay. All right.
So I look into renting a satellite phone, and it turns out those are ridiculous.
Yeah.
But our friend Brad Allen let me borrow his satellite walkie-talkie with presets in it, so I could like let our wives know that we're okay twice a day.
Right.
And that was cool. But we get close. We're getting up to the day we're gonna go. Getting nervous. I got my test stuff. Got all my grains packed up. Got my hops pre-measured. Got my checklist. Got my kettle. I got all that. I'm like, all right, Olin, you're gonna have to take some of this, and we split it all up. And we finally get to go to Sports Basement to pick up our stuff, which I'm thinking it's going to be like brand new stuff.
Sure. Why not?
So this is well-worn, well-hiked stuff, which is fine, but not the latest, greatest. So all of a sudden the weight estimates, we're thinking we're going to have like mid 40 packs weight-wise. And then we start loading everything in there. And the first time I put my pack on the scale, it's at like 58 pounds.
Oh.
Like, well, I don't need that many pairs of socks. I don't need that many pairs of shirts. I don't need, you just start, the non-essentials start going out.
Yeah. And especially when you're planning for a true backpack experience, you don't think that like socks are going to weigh that much, but they are sort of like, those things are for your shirt for sure. I need one shirt, maybe 2 or whatever. Cause it doesn't feel that way. It's still like, it's very weird. It's almost like a Sophie's Choice, I guess, in a way of like, what are you going to throw out, food or your clothes?
Well, and the other thing is all your stuff has to go in these bear bins, and they're like hard plastic jugs with like a lid that you screw on, and you screw them past this like little tamper-proof part that a bear can't undo. So I looked at that. I'm a big guy. I'm 225 pounds. I like to eat. Like 4 days, that's a long time, maybe 5, because you got to always have that, like, what if something goes wrong? And all this dehydrated junk. So long story short, whittled it down to about 50 some odd pounds.
Reasonable, dude. Reasonable.
And then the last thing we realized is where we're starting is not where we're parking the car. So you need a shuttle. You need someone to like drive you from where you're going to park your car to where you're going to start your hike. And so I think this is going to be like, oh, we'll Uber it. Or, I live in a city. So I started Googling it, and I'm like, oh, God. So I called, nope, I'm fully booked that date. Nope, I'm fully booked that date. Nope, I'm fully booked that day. And finally, do you have any recommendations? Yeah, try Lone Pine Kurt. I'm like, it's really his name? That's how I'm going to find him? I'm like, yep, Google it. Boom. Lone Pine Kurt at AOL.com.
Okay.
I feel real confident in this.
Yeah.
He sets it up. He's like, I got a morning shuttle, but I can do the afternoon shuttle. And it'll be about this time. I'm like, well, we'll take what we can get. And so Lone Pine Kurt picks us up. Great car ride with him. It's like 30 minutes of driving through the middle of nowhere up a ridge line. And he drops you off. And you're like, I sure hope this is the start of the trail, because everything I've looked at is a map.
Right.
I honestly thought we were going to be walking through pristine meadows and such. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. And so day one, we puts us in at Horseshoe Meadow, anyone who knows where we are. And we're going to go to Rock Creek Campground. I guess most people would stop at this one lake that's a couple of miles away. Bull and I, we're not about a couple of miles. We're trying to get to where we can go fishing. And
Right.
So he's like, I think we could do it. And, I think it's like 9 miles or so looking at the map or whatever. So we set out hiking 12:30 in the afternoon, hot, packs are heavy. We're cruising. We're going fast because it's like we're not quite sure how far we're going. Turns out we went 13.42 miles that day, gaining 1,500 feet in about 6.5 hours. And we started going faster towards the end because it was getting dark.
Yeah.
Well, we got to get to that campground.
That's pretty good though, man. 13 miles in 6 hours. Yeah, you were huffing it.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
we're doing like 24-minute miles or so, I think is what that goes down to. I think that day Olin fell twice, like full on turtled. I wasn't even around him, so if he had hurt himself, I don't know what we would have done, because we tended to just kind of take off and just get in your own head and walk for a while and then catch up with each other. And I was ahead of him, so that would have been bad.
Yeah.
But then I started getting looking at my hand, and it's like I closed my fist and my hand was real tight. I'm like, what is that about? And it's like, I guess that's part of one of the things of if you're having a little bit of altitude, you swell a little bit.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm like, I read about that on the internet. And we're up at like 13,000 feet at this point, or somewhere like that. Maybe 11. But anyways, we're getting, and we're hiking away. It's starting to get dark. We're both like, God, I hope we find a place soon. We pass this mom and son who are coming the other way towards us, which there's nowhere for 13 miles. And it's dark, and they're just hiking into the woods. We're like, this is really strange.
Yeah, only one of them walked out.
I say son, he's in his 20s or so, not like a little kid. But I was like, oh, and they're like, is there anywhere to camp up there? And I'm like, no. I'm like, well, we'll find a place. I'm like, okay. And they're like, oh, you're not far at all from Rock Creek Campground. We're like, oh, sweet. So we're hiking along, and all of a sudden we're both dying at this point. And there's a little stream, and 5 or 6 guys who are setting up their tents right after it. And I'm like, kind of thought Rock Creek Campground would be a little bit bigger than this, but whatever.
Right.
And the guy's like, oh, hey guys, I'm so sorry we're taking up so much space here. Technically I only had a permit for 4 guys, but we have 6 because he's a guide or something. Long story short, we're like, whatever, we don't care. We're exhausted. I just want to drink some whiskey, eat some food, and go to bed.
Right.
My feet hurt. And earlier this summer, weightlifting, I did something to my back, like compressed discs or some crap like that, to the point where I have sciatic nerve pain.
Nice, dude. You're primed. You're in your prime for going on a hike.
It's like
brew.
My foot has this like electrical feel sometimes, and I was starting to get that on the hike. Anyway, we get there. We're like, we don't care. We found a place, set up tent, make some dinner. And by the way, we recorded all this. We're working on our YouTube video, and I'll send it over when we have it.
Maybe please do.
Pick it up the show notes and whatnot.
Yeah. Well, that takes work.
A little thing every night, which is kind of fun, especially after a little bit of whiskey, because you don't bring beer on that trip. And anyway, wake up in the morning, and I tend to be a pretty early person in the morning, so I kind of scoot out and I go for a walk just because I want to see what's around us, but without my backpack, so I'm delighted. And no less than a half mile away is the real Rock Creek Campground. Granted, it's not like electric and running water and anything like that. It's just an open meadow next to a big stream or creek with lots of places to get your water out of, and places you could tell that people have camped before, and it's all under protected big redwood trees and whatnot. So
I like how the so-called guides from the other trip didn't tell you that.
That's what I was saying. I'm like, I wonder how much this guide has really done this before.
Yeah. Oh, this is it, guys. I don't know.
When they were going all the way to Tuolumne Meadows in like Yosemite, and it's like a 28-mile backpacking trip.
That's wild.
I was like, that's not cool. Like, there's nothing about that sounds good.
No.
But all their packs were like 38 pounds. And I think part of that was that as part of his guide service, he hooks up with like different companies that will help him get food to the right areas. They'll go and hike it in for dinner type stuff.
Right. Okay. That's cool.
Yeah. So they're not carrying 28 days worth of food, or that would kill you right off the get-go.
Yeah, absolutely.
So anyway, that's day one, and I'm exhausted just even reliving day one.
My urge would have been like, let's just brew here. Let's just set up and make beer here, and then we go. Then we have 3 days away.
One night, Jason, that's coming up.
Then we go like, well, look, now we have 3 days away from our families. We can just hang out.
So day two,
yeah,
we're looking at the map, and we're like, look at this, like Crabtree Lake, and what if we went to lower because it looks like it's bigger, and I heard fishing reports that it has the bigger fish, blah blah blah.
Of course.
And so we're looking at it on the map, and there's no real path to it, but there's kind of a general area you're going to. We're like, yeah, let's just beat path for that. So we wake up in the morning, and what's nice is now we're not leaving at 12:30 in the afternoon. You leave at 8 in the morning, and you're like, we have all day to get there. It's not like if something goes wrong, a twisted ankle or whatever. But there's no picnic tables to stop at and sit and relax. There's nothing like that out in the wilderness.
Yeah.
So you don't end up taking these big breaks, but that's fine. So we hiked 12.65 miles, but we gained 2,400 square feet, 2,400 feet. That's still quite a bit of elevation.
Yeah.
And like the first 4 miles of it, 5 miles, was on a path, like easily, clearly marked. John Muir Trail, which is part of the Pacific Coast Trail at that point. So it was very well laid out, easy to follow. But then we're like, okay, now is where we got to we're looking at the map going, we got to go to the right here in this meadow, and there's no real paths. So we just start kind of walking on the side of the meadow, so we know not to walk in the middle. And there's kind of a path, and we're not sure if these are like horse paths or if they're wild animal paths, bear paths, whatever. We don't know.
Yeah.
So we're following that. We're like, according to the map, there should be this trail coming up. So for 2 miles, we're kind of without any markings at all.
Smart.
Nervous.
Yeah.
But it's still middle of the day. Something goes wrong. We can backtrack out of there, we hope.
Sure. No one ever gets lost in the middle of the day. That's a good rule of thumb.
Yeah. See?
Yeah.
And so long story short, we finally find the trail that we want to be on.
Okay.
Awesome. This should make it so easy. This should be like final 2 miles should be cake. Wrong. Final 2 miles got to the point where, when people stack rocks on top of each other?
Yeah.
Like by a riverbed or whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought that was a hippie thing to do. I didn't realize out on trails, it's a way of marking like this is part of the trail. Like, you're going in the right area.
Yeah.
It's like see one. It was like, whatever. See another one. And then we get to this field of rocks. And I shit you not, it is, as far as my eye can see, rocks that are like bigger than I'm trying to make. And that crevice all the way down to the ground in between them. So if you slip through, you're probably going to break an ankle or whatnot.
Okay.
So you're walking on top of them, wearing a huge pack. And the only guiding light you have is when you see a set of stacked rocks, like on the other side going, I just know I need to get there somehow.
Yeah.
And then when we get past that spot, all of a sudden we see this lake. And it's like, oh, it's just gorgeous. Huge slab of granite straight down into the water on one side. And then the other side, and the whole lake is ours. And we hiked the length of the lake. It's not that big, but a quarter mile or so. Find the best place to set up camp. And then we start fishing, cook up some fish. Sounds much better than the dehydrated food that we normally ate.
Right.
And it was just so like surreal and serene. But that night, as I'm sleeping, I'm just not sleeping well. You're at high altitude. Your brain's billion miles a minute thinking about everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking like, one, can we fake the lunar landing and basically just brew at this campsite or something?
Right.
Try to pull that one off. But I don't know what the top looks like. I have no idea versus what we're sitting in.
I'm sure it doesn't look like a lake.
Well, I didn't mean like wide angle views.
Yeah. Oh, sure. Okay.
But then I'm like, why did I choose 1 gallon? Because I was going through like, we need to collect this much water before we go. So I'm like, okay, we're going to be adding over 12 pounds to our packs just for brewing water on that summit day, which is already going to be a hell of a hike anyway. Like, what made me choose, 1 gallon, blah, blah, blah. So
was that lake where you were picking up water to then bring up to brew?
No, we had one more night of camping.
Oh, okay. All right.
So talked to Olin in the morning. I'm like, dude, I know this might sound wimpy, but I really think we need to make a change of plan. And I think he was kind of like, well, what are we doing? Like, are we leaving? Or I'm like, no, we're brewing. Well, what if we go to a half gallon?
My copter is coming to pick me up.
Water weight from 12 pounds to 6 pounds. He's like, yeah, had me at 6 pounds.
Yeah. Okay.
So anyway, that was like the we're not going to fake where we brewed, but we're going to cut down how much we brew. And so it's like, okay, I could ditch a little grain too and whatnot. And we're still in an area where there's easier places to do that. So day 3 is our easy day. We know it's easy. We looked on the map. We backtracked through those 2 miles of like uncharted territory. It wasn't nearly as bad when kind of you're going to hit this big trail again.
Right.
Like, it's a 6-mile day, 1,200 foot elevation change, 3 hours or something. Get to a lake called Guitar Lake. Cool little lake, but you're just in this like pristine mountains. Sheer mountains are all around you, and I'm sitting there like, where is it? Like, where is this mountain? Like Whitney thing. And Olin's like, I think it's back behind that somewhere or whatnot, because he hadn't been from that side either.
Right.
We're using like our compass on our phones. Like, the phone doesn't work, but the compass still works. And I'm like, it's there. And we're both like, there? How could it be there? But it's got to be. I mean, the compass says it's that way in the map of it.
Yeah.
So apparently Guitar Lake is where everybody in the world who's going to summit Mount Whitney from that side comes before they go up.
Okay.
So what started as like 4 people camping around this lake turned into like the international like fest of people speaking all kinds of languages. There had to be 20 groups. Wow. Everyone sticks to themselves. Backpackers don't tend to be too social. One crazy guy got naked and jumped in the lake. Yeah. And everybody was like, wow, you don't see that every day.
How did you dry off after?
I didn't look.
How did you dry off?
It was cold. Yeah. Oh, got it. Yeah. So anyway, we go to bed that night with like, okay, tomorrow's it. What do we think? We'll wake up 4. We know we got to get up early. I'd asked Brad what time he did it because he went from Guitar Lake up, and they started at 4. And I'm like, okay, that sounds like a good time to start. And Ola and I, we don't eat badly. We both like good food. So we had fresh roasted coffee, a little mocha java that we had roasted up for the trip. So we made, we had everything kind of laid out to be able to do everything in the morning.
Yeah.
Still thinking we're going at like 4 something in the morning. At like 3 something, Olin wakes me up and he's like, dude, look out the tent. And I can see, and we were trying to figure out where the path must be where we hiked the day before. But at night, when people are wearing their like high intensity headlamps, you could see the path for the most part.
Okay.
Of dots going up. And I'm like, are those stars?
Oh, nice.
Like, no, those are headlamps. I'm like, oh shit, that's the path right there.
That's cool.
It was pretty far away, but so here we are at 3 a.m, making coffee. We made oatmeal and of course, Olin throws in like chia seeds and all kinds of fun stuff into the oatmeal to give extra fiber and all that kind of stuff.
Sure. Yeah. Just pick up dirt off the ground and throw it in at that point.
And so, I mean, this day is going to be a brutal day. And I already knew like the first part of the day is going to be a little over 5.5 miles and almost 3,000 feet of vertical gain.
Wow.
This is where you're going from 11,500 to 14,505. That's before we brew. So we head out at, I think, 3:45 in the morning to head up there. So, eat as fast as you can, throw the backpack on, get the headlamp on, which mine's not working right. So we're trying to figure it out.
But you left a lot of gear was that your base camp?
No. This is, we're not going that way. We're going up with our gear and coming back the other side with our gear because we didn't come in the way we left.
Right. Okay. Got it. Okay.
There is a spot before the summit that we do leave most of our gear.
Okay.
But it's only like a mile before the true summit.
At that point, who cares? Might as well just carry it.
You do.
Yeah, right. But you know what I mean, right? It's like, oh, well, all right, fine. I mean, I'll take the win, but it's a small win. Yeah.
Okay. So when you are at these altitudes, you are no longer allowed to bury what might come out.
Your poo-poo cock-a-doodie.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they give you at the start of the hike, and we bought some at REI beforehand, a thing called a wag bag. And if you ever want to look it up, you can, but it's a little kit. It's really cute. It's green. And it's, one big bag with like a zip top, and you open that up, and then there's another bag, and you unfold that, and then there's little hand wipes and a little bit of toilet paper all in a pretty little bow, and it's all biodegradable.
Okay.
And so we're hiking in the dark on the side of a mountain, and it's a little scary. And we get up, and around 5:45, we just start seeing the light, the sunlight, and it's like, oh, this is awesome. Now I don't need the headlamp. It looks beautiful. So we're cruising up, and Olin's flying, and I'm a tortoise, like barely making it, but about let's say 14,000 feet or so. The stomach starts rumbling, all this coffee, all this
the chia seeds oatmeal are coming around, man. Okay.
And I'm like, and we're on a trail that's this wide, that one side just goes to death, and the other side is like a rock wall straight up.
Mm-hmm. So you're clinging to one side. Yeah.
And we're just hiking up along this wall, and I'm like, Olin, it's time, and he of course is recording, and like on his camera recording, like, hey Chris, what's a wag bag? And I'm like, hold on. And
I will show you right now.
Yeah. So he did finally eventually move along, and everything worked out okay. Everything got into the bag, and you have to pack it out of there. You don't just leave it on the trailhead for some cleanup crew, because there is no such thing.
Right. Okay. So
and,
the wag bag execution was perfect.
Everything worked.
Was great. Okay.
I don't know if perfect's the word, but
see, I'm too sensitive, man. I don't know if I could just use toilet paper. I got a bidet insert, so I'm all water all the time. I don't know. Maybe I can't do this hike.
You got to slum it once in a while. So
maybe I don't know.
So, but when I finish, Olin's way ahead of me now. We're kind of hiking up, and I know we're getting pretty close to like some pretty good altitude.
Yeah.
I see like a little swimmer across my eye. My fingertips are kind of tingling a little bit, and you're like, oh, no, like calm down, like get the heart rate. And we're wearing we both have Apple Watches, and we both had them in hike mode, which was great because then you could see your heart rate. And most of this hike, like leading up to this, we're running 146 to 150 something all the time. Mm-hmm. And I'm hitting 170s, and I'm like, oh, I know my like do not go above line somewhere in the 170s. Like, and then I'm hiking up, and I'm like, yeah, I'd read like, you should know your limits and don't do it if you don't want to cause a danger for someone else, like
to come and get you or whatever. Yeah, dude.
And so I'm getting up, but I'm like, nope, keep moving one foot after the other and just keep going. And then I finally see Olin, and he's at the spot I was talking about where you can dump your packs and hike up. But we can't dump our packs or all of it, because we have to have our brewing stuff.
Yeah.
So I meet him there. I completely lie to him and be like, yeah, I'm fine. But don't tell him a thing, because I don't want him to be like, no, maybe we shouldn't do this. I'm not going to be the guy who does this to our team.
Right there. You're right there. You're not going to leave.
You're a mile and some pretty hairy hiking, but got to take a little break there, unload backpacks. And Olin is weird in that I'm really fairly good at hiking downhill. I like to let the weight do the work.
Sure.
And he can go uphill. So he's like, let me wear the pack for brewing on the way up and you wear it on the way down. I'm like, yeah, that's great. So I got it was just perfect time for all that. And I was able to breathe deeply, get everything back underneath me, start head up the hill. We make it up, beautiful views, stunning. Get up to the top. There's this hut up there that the Smithsonian built. And we get to the very top and all of a sudden we realize there's these like rock made bunkers that people have made over the years.
Mm-hmm.
So we go down to one of the bunkers and just start pulling out the brewing equipment and ingredients. And one of them is a digital thermometer, thermopen. Do you have a ThermoWorks?
Yeah.
I have one. I love those, but I
instant read thermometer. Yeah.
Yeah. I have a little pop that I brought with me on the trip. Not quite as fast, but it weighs fractions of a pound.
Mm-hmm.
And so I put it down where we're going to brew and it's 37 degrees. I was like, when you're in the brew room in Pittsburgh, California at 90 degrees, it's a much different brew day than at 37 degrees with the winds blowing on the top of this mountain. So, I had all like, if you make this degree water and you add it into the grains, you should be here based off of what I did, at elevation. And so we started doing that. We get it to 152, but then all of a sudden 152 becomes like 130 or 112, like super quick because of the air temp.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so we had these little Instapot, they're not called Instapots, which I know is a brand, but they're like these little backpacking boilers that are great for like heating up water quickly. Mm-hmm. You can heat a liter of water in like a minute or two.
Okay.
So I'm like, we're both like decoction time. So we take a third of the mash out, bring it up to a boil, add it back in. That brings us back up to mash temp again. And we had to do that 4 times to hold a 20-minute mash at 152.
Wow.
Then we pull the bag out, let that drain and get that up to a boil. And we got a boil at 183, I want to say.
Boil at 183. Okay.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Add our hops and did like a 20-something minute boil. And then cool is that Kegland out of Australia had just released like 2 weeks before this trip these bags that are like multi-layered bags that can handle hot packing. That's what they're designed for. So you go right in at a boil. So that's what we did is we went right from the boil kettle through a funnel right into one of these bags and just sealed it off, threw it in the backpack, took pictures and all that. Was a tourist for like 10, 15 minutes.
What do you mean? You poured it in the bag hot.
Yep,
and
boiling hot.
Is there some sort of like mojo that cools it down, or it just because it's so cold it's going to cool down anyway?
We're just going to hot pack and pitch it. We still have a 11-mile hike to go.
Yeah. So
let's just get down to like 11,000 feet or 10,000 feet, whatever we're going down to. Actually, it's 8,327 to be exact. But let's just get down there so that we can pitch the yeast and all that jazz and be off this mountain.
This rock. Okay.
Yeah. So, we take our pictures. Some guy or gal or team, whatever, did like this cool aluminum sign that's all like water blasted out, Mount Whitney, 14,400 with cool graphics. And people just leave it up there and everyone takes pictures with it. Mm. And then we start hiking out. So, it was a almost 6-mile hike up and now we got 11 miles to go to get down. And so we get back, get our bags fully loaded up and just start hiking. And I think we were off the mountain by 9:45 or so. And we're cruising down the mountain and all of a sudden, we're pretty far from the peak at this point. We're probably, let's say, noon at this point. So 2.5 hours later, we hear thunderstorms and such above you. You can't even see the clouds. There's just the way the wind blows and on these high peaks, these storms hit it that don't hit anywhere else. And it sounds, like thunder, but you're close to it. So it's pretty damn scary. And I'm glad we got off the mountain by that point.
Right.
And then we're just hiking downhill through canyons and crevices. And there's a place called 1,000 Switchbacks. I think 1,100 Switchbacks. I think actually, now that I say that out loud, literally, you remember this from your hiking and Boy Scouts where you're just like this and this
Yeah. Well, when you tell a story, make it 1,000 Switchback. It sounds cool. It sounds cooler. It also sounds like a kung fu movie.
It felt like 1 billion Switchbacks at this point.
Yeah.
But we knew, and Brad had told me about it at the base where we're getting to, where our car is and everything like that. It's this restaurant that serves like cheeseburgers and beer and stuff like that. So you just have this in your head. Like if we get there in time before they close, 6 o'clock, I get a cheeseburger. If I get there after 6, I get like reconstituted dry food that's called beef stroganoff or something of that nature with some water.
Yeah, brown styrofoam and chia seeds from Olin's personal stash.
Exactly.
Okay.
So we made it out, and we kind of hauled ass. I think we got off the mountain at 4:30. I think we were both just sick of being on the mountain.
Absolutely, dude.
And everything hurts at this point. I mean, there's just nothing that doesn't hurt. Hips, from the supporting the backpacks, obviously anything below the waist is all just pressure from, you're going downhill. So the whole weight of the pack is pushing down on your entire spine, just pushing down on your body. And it's brutal.
And your knees ache because you're trying to slow down a little bit. And yeah.
Well, Olin is like, hey, you want to take a break? And I'm kind of like, part of me is like, I'd rather keep going because I'm afraid if I stop, I don't know if I'm going to.
Yes, absolutely, dude. Yes. Hiking, you're sort of, you have to just keep going. You're like, you're in first gear. Like, I'm not going to go faster, but I'm not going to stop.
Momentum is there. So we make it down there and bacon cheeseburgers and the Modelo, which I know is not something people get excited about, but I'm not about to drink a big hoppy IPA at this point.
I get excited over Modelo for literally sitting on my couch. So I can imagine how it tasted after that whole experience.
Yeah. So that was pretty much the nutshell. Then obviously we pitched our yeast that night. We stayed at a campground because it was, still pretty late. We've stayed at a campground even lower by the Upper Owens River, which, by the way, is world-class fly fishing. So we happened to, in the morning, just happen to have our rods with us. So take advantage of that for just a couple hours.
Of course. We don't want to get too excited. Home. That's cool, man. What kind of, what style of beer did you make? Or was it even like a thing?
It's pale ale, really hoppy pale ale. So we're at 14,500 feet, which is similar to 14.5 Plato, which is 1059 starting gravity.
Okay.
Yes, I'm a nerd.
So that's what you did.
This all out.
Okay. Did you hit those numbers?
I didn't bring a freaking hydrometer. I nailed those numbers in the brew lab.
Okay.
But I did not bring a refractometer or a hydrometer. I had them both packed, and I weighed them both, and they both stayed home.
Oh, got it. Okay. There was no app on your phone or your watch or something like that to figure that out. Okay.
We did, 2-row and some crystal, and then Magnum and Citra and Mosaic throughout the rest. So a nice hoppy pale ale, and then used the Cali yeast, that dry yeast. I love that strain now. And Olin and I got to taste the beer 2 days ago.
Ah, okay. And
yeah, it was good. It was a bit too hoppy. I went a little too aggressive on how much went in the last minute of the boil. Okay. And I wanted to use a hot bag, and Olin didn't, and so it all went in. It all went to the fermenter, and so I think it just got a little too aggressive that way. You could definitely taste a great malt profile, but that intense grassiness of the hops was there. We also pitched a lot of yeast.
Yeah.
And so it had a bit of a haze and a little bit of a yeast character to it.
Okay. Is that disappointing?
No.
Okay.
If I want to drink good homebrew, I'll just make it at home. I mean, to be honest.
Well, I mean,
I didn't do this trip with the whole I got to make world-class beer. I'm not going on it.
Well, I mean, that's fair, man. I guess I would be, I don't know, I guess it's sort of how my dumb brain misfires, where it's like, oh man, I sort of regret, I should have done this. And you sort of lose the forest for the trees, no pun intended.
No, but that's the beer. That's the last bottle. I'm going to age it for a little bit, but I mean, obviously you don't want to age it too much.
Oh yeah, no, age it, man.
What's that?
I said age it. Yeah.
Well, hoppy beer age. Yeah, that's great.
So tell me about the hot bag, or what did you call it? Hot sack?
Hop pack.
Hop, HOP?
Hot.
Hot
H-O-T.
pack. What is that?
So hot packing.
That seems interesting to me.
I'm trying to think who first did it. Dan Listerman was the first guy I knew who did it.
Mm-hmm.
This is, again, HBD days. And he used to do where he would brew. And I really think, and sorry, Dan, if you're seeing this, but you know me well enough to know we can have a little fun together, is I think Dan got a little too drunk while brewing. And instead of wanting to finish his beer after the boil, he just put his lid on and would come back the next day where it's cooled down, get it into his fermenter and pitch the yeast. And he said most of the time he made good beer that way.
Yeah. I get a little leery about when people say they made good beer in the late 90s, early 2000s, because I don't feel like anybody really knew well enough.
Well, and it's all arbitrary, right?
Of course. Right.
So Kegland out of Australia and a couple other places in Australia do it where they hot pack they'll go to a professional brewery or whatnot, and they'll work on like, hey, we want to take out X amount of these. And you probably remember the clear, like opaque, like whitish, 64-pound malt extract things would get, head packs, I think we call them.
Yeah, head packs, yeah.
They will fill essentially those things that are food grade or tolerant of heat. They'll fill those at a boil, seal them up with no air in them, and label them and put them in shops. And people will come pick up a one and they just bring it home, add yeast, and they're done. It's pretty common.
That's wild.
We've been worried about it from a botulism standpoint.
Yeah.
And so apparently Australia, botulism doesn't exist.
No, man. It's no, it's just a territory they took over.
So anyway, so the whole concept, though, Darren does it quite a bit successfully because I've had his beer, where he goes into his conicals, stainless conicals, clean sanitizes them. Then he pushes them out with nitrogen. Then he fills boiling wort in from the bottom and then lets them cool overnight. They're fully sealed. And in fact, he even has it's not just a spunding valve. He has it where he has a nitrogen tank going in on a low pressure. And so it can handle expansion and contraction. So as it cools, it contracts. And he's got a valve on top that only lets nitrogen in.
Okay.
Yeah, I think they used to be for barrels, if you remember the white valve.
The breather, cask breather.
Cask breathers and things like that. But he's got it set up with nitrogen. And so he's pretty well able to make a sealed off vessel, cool it down overnight, and pitching the next day. So botulism doesn't stand a chance, that kind of stuff. So I started doing it at home, maybe a little faster, but I go hot into a stainless conical into a fridge, which I'm slamming down to like 38 degrees or whatnot for a couple of hours until I get the internal temperature in the 60s, and then bringing it back to ale fermentation, pitch my yeast, and go. And I can usually do that the same day.
Mm-hmm. Why
you're
not?
Running a lot less risk.
Yeah, but why not just use a wort chiller?
Slow, and
okay.
you're usually a little more open. I do use wort chillers too, but hot packing, if you do it right, you're going into something with no air in it. And so the beauty of the hike was we knew we had hours and hours and hours of time and no running water. So there wasn't going to be a wort chiller. There wasn't going to be, sometimes there's snowpack up there. Sometimes there's not. Mm-hmm. There wasn't when we were up there. So it's,
Sure. No, I didn't mean
we went into these boil-proof bags to bring home.
Yeah, no, on the hike it definitely makes sense, but I was talking like on a homebrew level, like. But I guess it's a good way to save water. I mean, you don't need to. If you don't need to do it, if you do it right, if you hot pack the proper way, you don't need a wort chiller.
Well, I think a lot of people are using these bags too as one-time fermenters. So they're hot packing into them, fermenting in them, transferring out of them, which is its own trick, and then they're just throwing them away. It's a plastic bag. Throw them in the recycle bin.
Yeah, throw them in the ocean. That's where they all end up. Just put them over the turtles' heads and just run and then go away.
I put free turtle food on the side before I threw it in the recycle bin.
Man, that's a Looney Tunes cartoon right there. That sounds interesting, man. I mean, it sounds like they're recyclable, so that's good. That's a trip, man. So look at that. If you guys are out there, want to brew on the road or do something cool like that, Look up these hot. Do you guys sell them at More Beer?
Oh yeah,
just hot pack bags.
Hot pack
bags. Okay. Do you have the recipe for the Whitney trip up in case anybody wants to replicate your super hoppy pale ale?
In the video, we'll have all of that, and I'm hoping to have the video. Like, we've seen the prelims. We did the which he's edited down nicely. Joe has, and then we did the tasting on Tuesday or Monday. Mm-hmm. So I'm hoping actually we'll have the final product in the next few days to review and whatnot. And it's nice. It'll just fill everything we just talked about into like 15 minutes.
Oh, good. Okay, great.
Like Benny Hill hiking up the mountain. Like
that sounds good. All right, hang on, everybody. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back. We're going to chat more homebrew with Chris from More Beer. Hang on. It's The Session. We'll be right back.
Segmented, demented, fermented. It's The Session.
Hey, glad you're still here. Thanks for hanging out, everybody. It's The Session. We're back with Chris Graham from More Beer. You go to morebeer.com. Of course, they bring you this and every session. If you want absolutely everything you need to make great beer at home, you go to morebeer.com. You can also do coffee roasting and winemaking and probably something else I've never heard of yet because I'm so out of the loop. But Chris, I want to talk with you about high-end home brewing because you've done the shows before where we've what do we call it? Brewing on the cheap or brewing like a cheap SOB or whatever it is, where it's like here's your brass, everything, and you can just buy at Home Depot because everything's real cheap, which is not the case anymore. But I wanted to try to sort of go on the other side of that. What about high-end home brewing, high-end equipment? Because after all, being in the home brew industry, we're all super rich. So we can all afford it.
Yes. Brewing is where the money is.
Yeah, man. You didn't know that? If you want to get wealthy fast, open a homebrew shop. No, it's more of like, I guess what we were talking about just during the break, it's, prices have either come down, but things have been innovating. People have been innovating in this space for a long time. Just things have shifted, especially since I started homebrewing and definitely since you started homebrewing because you're way older than me. So I just want to talk a little bit about that. Like for those people who have, I don't want to say disposable income, but if you're home brewing and you want to get the most for your money, if you want to, really just splurge on stuff, how can you make a big splash jumping into home brewing or even updating your old bucket and siphon? What can we do here? How can we do some damage?
The cool thing is high-end brewing, in my mind, doesn't have to equal high expensive brewing as a direct corollary. Now, there are some things, and we'll go over a couple of them today, that are pretty expensive, but you're not talking $100,000 type stuff. You're talking up to 10,000. I mean, unless you want to start a brewery. But really it's more about like convenience. What are the things you hate? What are the things that make this hobby hard sometimes? This is a hobby like any other hobby where people come in, get all excited. The work doesn't bother them until it does. And that can be the kiss of death for a lot of people is washing bottles for a good amount of people is when they end homebrewing at some point. They never even get past that stage because they hated bottle washing so much. Then suddenly kegging became, 20 years ago, kegging was the luxury item, high-end item, if you will, comparatively to bottling.
True. And now it's sort of the default.
Yeah, we sell starter kits with it.
Like bottling now I feel like is sort of just like a thing you can do, but you don't have to really do it. And it's cleaning the bottles. Now for me, cleaning kegs is I don't want to do it. I want a service that'll clean it for me.
But okay, so when we were cleaning kegs years ago in the back of the shop and we hated it. And we had that wand that would spray everything around the place. It was a pain in the ass. And then Tasty comes up with this cool little device using a pump and a bucket. And, we all made one when he brought it to us. And, he wanted to make a commercial product out of it, but it was so expensive. And you're buying like off-the-shelf components that we couldn't buy at any kind of wholesale level enough to be able to make a product out of. So it really never went anywhere for years, but it was such a cool product. Now there's, the bucket blaster for $69. There's Mark's keg washer for $99. There's, like 3 or 4 different products that all do a very similar thing. For under $100, that clean carboys, buckets, kegs, all kinds of stuff with a recirculating pump system.
Wow. You can buy basically your own keg washer for home brewing.
Yeah. Now, keep in mind, we're home brewers. We're not using caustic. So it's a lot longer exposure time, things like that. But yeah, I mean, for under $100, people are buying these things to just do a closed recirculation like Tasty's been doing for years. I'm
okay with if it takes me longer, but I have to do less work. I think that's a good trade-off.
Well, and he's the one who taught us if we were to ever make a commercial product, which we never did on this, but he's like, put a timer on it. He's like, because he would go start a keg or two, then go back in and go back to work, and then forget about it, and then run them dry over hours and hours and hours, and come back to it and hear this low grinding noise where the PBW is so concentrated that it's just eating the impeller of this pump away.
Nice. That's cool, man. I never would have thought that is it that just parts are cheaper, or people have figured out how to do that?
Well, in the last 15 years, a lot of us, we did a lot of stuff in house, right? We welded, we tried to fabricate out of plastic, we tried to fabricate out of metal, we tried to fabricate different things. Colin was always, he was just in my office a couple hours ago, and we're talking about making something else. And it's that's our DNA, where we want to figure out how to do this. But what simultaneously happened was, people came into the industry outside of the industry who were having stuff made overseas. And the rest of us either were going to die or adapt, and you learn to adapt, and you find these manufacturers, you find how to work with them. And, suddenly we have an R&D team who is all skilled at AutoCAD and, different softwares to build product with, but you have that low cost labor, which, in a way sucks, but also in a way is driving the ability to have these low cost innovations come. I think when we finally parted out what we would do to make Mike's dream machine, it was a $200 keg or carboy washer that looked like it was made in Regan's basement. And I think even Mike was like, well, that's just too much. And that's why we didn't make a product out of it. But now you get them and they look purpose built and they're under $100. And it's like, wow, take a convenience like that. And so all of a sudden you start thinking about all the different cool things that we haven't been able to do. But with access to good engineers, good manufacturing and such, all of a sudden is able to be done. So now canning is like a thing homebrewers do.
Yeah, right? This thing tripped me the fuck out when I learned about it. I think Olin and I were talking about just updating the ads or whatever. I think last year, and he told me that there's a homebrew canning thing. I'm like, I don't know if I can't tell if you're joking. Because 5 years ago that would be just inconceivable. I'm just going to can my homebrew.
For the last however many years, there's been the October, which is like a good small brewery canning line. Mm-hmm. But then Kegland came out with the cannular, and it's $400 and something bucks, and it's like, holy cow! And it works. And what we love working with those guys is, they take good feedback, and we have a great system of giving them good feedback, and they take their customer feedback, our feedback. Excuse me, and they keep reiterating, and it's like, wow, we're making all of that for that price. So it's not like, oh, I have a canning line. I probably shouldn't say his full name, so I'll just say Claudius. Do you remember Claudius?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. He had a canning line, or maybe it was bottling, but it was automated. He built because he had an automation company.
Yes.
He used a lot of our parts to do it.
I think it was bottling.
He told me he had about $15,000 worth of parts into this thing. And it's like, he's just a home brewer gone wild. And he's a German, and very particular about what he wanted done and the way he wanted done. And it's just like, that's what it was in 1998 and 2003. And that, we were at the limitations of what we could figure out how to produce in our small warehouse. So that's just an example, the cleaning thing. It's the number one thing we all hate, right?
Right.
It's like, we hate cleaning, and it's like, oh, now I can buy not just one thing that, it used to be, oh yeah, you could buy a brush. Like, yay.
Right. Well, I remember that was a big thing too, trying to figure out the right brush. But now with a canning system, like, now you don't even need to do that. What are you cleaning kegs for? But I guess you need to put the beer into something, I suppose. So,
well, cans are sterile when you get them. So you're not typically cleaning those. But, there's other things. You actually need to carbonate that beer before you can it. So you are going into a keg. So that's a different thing.
Let's put carbonation drops in the can.
I don't want to get technical on this show about how beer is made.
No, why don't we do that? Yeah, you just get this can of the carbonation drops. Put 2 in each can, and you carbonate that way. Isn't that how it works? Like bottles? I'm kidding. Please don't nobody do that.
so it's like, now talk high end. The highest ends you can go are like gas and electric brew systems, typically 3 vessels. We have our sculptures there. Blickman's got some nice ones. Spike's got some nice ones. But you're still talking 6,000 to 8,000 at the highest end. And it's like, you're still doing the work. You're getting the control, but you're still doing the work. You're still present. You're still a brewer. It's not like turning itself upside down, dumping all the grain out, and you walk away and you're done. And people still want to solve that one where you just push a button and you're done. And, we're friends with a guy who's, been on Shark Tank twice now, and, he's got his device, but it's like, you're really disjointed from this whole process. You're putting water in a thing and pressing a button, and then an app tells you to come back to it. And, that was the cool part of the Pico was you kind of had some good controls. You could set like your parameters you wanted, and it would run it. So guys like JP couldn't screw up those parts.
That's right, baby.
I don't know how much you guys talk about how much you used to swear in the back of our warehouse when you were brew day.
Oh, I've blocked out much of what has happened, what I used to do at Moorbeer, but it was, no, I hated fucking homebrewing, and I've said that a lot, and what I loved about the Pico Brew is that I can get my day back. It's like when I first moved to this house, brewed a batch of beer, then hung Christmas lights. You could never do that. I mean, you could, but in that way, you're sort of sacrificing the hands-on, artisanal, the romance of brewing, because you're not adjusting stuff, ball valve stuff, but it depends on what you value more. Do you value your time? Back then when I was brewing on the 10-gallon system, I could sit and do it in my garage. Now I can't. I just don't have the time.
And that's it. And so it's like, we start thinking of like all these things that are like the rubs, the reasons people quit homebrewing. And it's like, and while some people absolutely love that control, and I know I have in the past, now I use a simple all-in-one brewery. I still like all grain. I still love that idea of I turn grains into wort and into beer, as opposed to, rehydrating an extract. Those, to me, have taken away 90% of the excuses. It's, where am I going to store this thing? You store a 3-vessel system and a frame and all that. It's half your garage.
Yeah.
And these little all-in-ones, the Bruzillas and the Foundries and the Mash and Boil, and there's another one I'm forgetting right now, Grainfather. Mm-hmm. And the original, which is the Braumeister.
Yeah, the Speidel.
And it's like, these things take up, I mean, I have mine in a shed, and it takes up, this by this in one shelf, and that's it. And I use it all the time now because it's so convenient. It's small enough I can pick up. I'm not worried about my kids running by it anymore. 20 gallons of boiling wort and my kids running around playing ball was a little bit precarious. And then I'll be honest, the other thing is when you're sitting next to a propane burner all day long, you're talking over that noise the whole time. You're breathing in some of that. Having the electric is just, I think, personally, just so nice.
I agree too, and that's a sign that we're getting old. Is when we're talking over the sound of a propane burner is too much for us.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. It's a little loud in here, honey. I should just really sit here.
But it's okay. Now you don't have to say brewing's a young man's game. It's like, yeah, you can do it that way. When you don't have enough money to afford this, like, okay, a Braumeister used to be the only way you could do that, right?
Right.
But a Braumeister started $2,000, $2,500, blah, blah, blah. Now these little ones are under 500. And it's like, okay, it's just this access to different, obviously competition drives down prices too, but access to different manufacturers and this kind of stuff. And it's like, and you would think at the the Brewzilla, it's $4.99. You would think, oh, that thing's going to be a piece of garbage. Actually, I lied. It's now $3.99, and it's what I brew on. It's easy. It's programmable. The programming is a little different. I got a whole page dedicated towards it, but once you get to know it, I use it mostly to just preheat water at the time I want it hot. So, I have kids now. I wake up early and I want to brew before soccer starts or whatnot. I can have that mash water ready to go first thing in the morning. But that's just luxury. I mean, things we just didn't have.
Right. Yeah, the space has really grown. I love the Brewzilla, by the way. I talk about it all the time on the show because it's sort of like a Pico brew, but it's also hands-on. Like, it takes a short amount of time. You can still do stuff, but it has that, added ability to, you have to add in your grains, or you have to sparge with that unit. And you don't have to, I guess. You can just do the, balance out the amount of water you were going to put in for sparge, add that with your grain, and then you can just add it into the ferment or whatever you can do. There's
the
options
BIAB method. Yeah.
That's cool, man. What else?
Yeah, so that to me is an example of a luxury, even though it's $400. I still consider that a luxury because it just didn't exist. And it's the type of thing that a lot of people are like, I haven't brewed in years. I got so sick of all the cleaning afterwards and storing all that and blah, blah, blah. My life changed. I just don't have time. And it's like, then you show them that and they're like, oh, yeah, I can do that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I think this conversation is sort of about also, is not only what damage can you do, but like you said, it doesn't, high end, it doesn't have to be, expensive. But it's also like how things have changed over the years. And for anybody who hasn't brewed, but maybe is still hanging on, listening to the shows or whatever, you can still get back into it for relatively cheap. And I know that word means different things to different people, but like you're saying, I mean, what do you think the technology for the Brewzilla would be 10 years ago? It would probably be out of the realm of more people, or it probably wouldn't even be put into production for the most part.
It was called a Braumeister.
Okay, well, yeah. There you go.
I'll admit, the Braumeister is, a nicer German construction and thicker metal. And it's, it's like looking at a Toyota versus a, high-end BMW or Mercedes or whatever you're into or whatnot. It's just different.
Yeah.
They both work. They both get around.
Yeah. No, the Braumeister was rad. I still remember brewing on that thing.
Yeah. Well, and it's like
they were great.
Other luxuries in my mind, we call luxury now, or I call luxury because, hydrometer was it. And if you wanted a refractometer, it's like, whoa, those are like $300 or $400. And now hydrometers or refractometers are pretty darn cheap. And I don't know if you've ever seen the Easy Dens that we sell. Now it's $350, but it's, an app on your phone, one drop or a little over one drop, one little tiny sample of the wort. And it does everything right to your phone. You can log it, all of that, but you can also get a refractometer for under $40. So it's like, these are all complete luxury items compared to like spinning a hydrometer. And wait, are you reading the top of the line? Are you reading in between the two?
Yeah. You got to get that meniscus lined up just right.
Well, then it's like, it also used to be like, well, I don't want to own 3 of these things, hydrometers. So I'm going to get one with a scale of 1 to 32 within this much range.
Yeah. And as you get older, it's harder. Well, and Easy Dents is very much a professional thing.
The beauty of Easy Dents is Anton Parse really sells into the commercial brewery world.
Yeah.
And they sell great units, but they're, I think, typically $4 or $5 grand minimum for these, equipment. They basically use the same tube. That's the magic little tube that the liquid goes through. Mm-hmm. And then did a board that was a little less expensive and such, to be able to produce this item.
Right.
And they don't want to hear this, but we've been told by breweries that sometimes they find it cheaper to buy each one of their brewers one of these and an iPad than it is to buy a fleet of a nice.
Well, that'll happen also. With innovation comes ways around high prices.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But, in those spaces, the quality is definitely there. Chris, let me take one last break, man. I'm really sorry. I got to cut you right off, but I just want to make sure I get everybody in here. So hang on, everyone. It's The Session. We'll be right back after I figure out what I'm saying.
You're listening to the Brewing Network. Because like beer, radio shouldn't suck.
All right, thanks for sticking around, everyone. We're almost done here with the homebrew topic for this nice session here with Chris Graham from More Beer. And we were talking Easy Dents, talking high-end equipment, just talking, I guess, essentially innovation in the space of homebrewing and what how things have changed. This is very much a back in my day conversation. Like back in my day, I had to pinch my fingers on whatever, but now robots, I have nanobots to do everything, and I just sit back. I wish that would be very cool. But what else can we look forward to if we want to sort of trick out our home brewing or upgrade or even get back into the game, honestly? Because I think there are some people out there like me who have struggled with that.
Well, for me, one of the last things is, anyone who really loved the hobby and got into kegging converted a fridge at some point, right? Mm-hmm. They made, I hate the word, Keezer.
That is the worst word, dude.
No, kegel is the worst word. Keezer is my second worst word.
Yeah.
But anyway, they made their own chest freezer. We used to have one in the back of the shop, mm-hmm. That Darren's or Olin's brother made, and with taps all over it, and everyone's made one. Old fridges, taps through the door, blah blah blah.
Yeah,
it was like, ooh, I want to do a kegerator, and for a long time we still actually sell true kegerators. No, we used to sell true kegerators, the mm-hmm. brand True, which is like what you see at a bar or whatnot, because they're like commercial grade kegerators. And I have one in my backyard, and those things retail for over $1,000, even more. And then you put in your draft stuff afterwards. And now it's like we sell these Komos kegerators, and it's like the basic home interior ones are, they're $500 to $700, maybe a little bit more here or there, depending on how you're outfitting. They'll hold 4 homebrew kegs in one kegerator on wheels.
Wow. With the CO2 tank? Where's the CO2 tank? Is it on the back?
On the back, on a little mount. And it has like a place. These guys thought of it all. Like, it's all thought out in terms of, there's a thing that you can break through on the fridge that you screw onto, and the CO2 goes right through without leaking.
Get out of town.
And I switched over a couple of years ago to these Duo-type fittings. And it's like I used to have gas leaks all the time. And, I'd sit there with my hose clamp and clamp it down, cutting my hand half the time because it slipped off the...
I have scars on this knuckle right here from not only doing that in draft systems, but putting those draft systems together, by the way. That's a work injury.
I think your statute
of limitations is out.
Corpus or whatever is far expired at this point.
I don't know. My finger doesn't stop doing this. I can't. Anyway, those things are vicious, man.
Yeah. So anyway, we now just use where you have the hose and you just push it in, pull it out a little bit, and it just locks and it doesn't leak, and it's awesome.
What are those called?
Everything to Duo-Tight now.
Duo-Tight.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and now we just started carrying, as of this week or last week, Como's double wide kegerators. So literally you could fit 8 kegs in them, 2 towers. It's just ridiculous. Wow. And that's $1,500. Like for 8 I mean, you could run a small brewery off of these things.
Well, and what the good part about those is I remember, I don't know, 2005 or so, I moved into the house in Concord and I wanted a chest freezer. And back then, I haven't looked in a while, but there was, anyway, it died. But I got it off of Craigslist. And there was a moment in time where you could do that. But then after that died, I looked online and kept looking for months and months, and they were gone. Either they were being taken up before I could grab them by people who wanted to do chest freezers and stuff like that, or just for, prepper. I don't know what was going on, but you couldn't find them anymore. So then I had to get like a stand-up fridge and convert it, and those are much more of a pain in the ass. Because if you're drilling through the side, which any human being would do, maybe the coolant is in this side. So you don't really know. It's very hard, and it's costly because you're sitting there doing all that stuff. And that's, I guess, what I'm trying to get at with all this is what can we do to limit the amount of work, because we're all aging out of being able to do homebrew work at home. You know what I mean?
Well, and with we're getting old. We like things to look decent, and this looks like a professional kegerator. I mean, it looks like something that belongs in a bar, not something that belongs in the dark basement that nobody should see under dim lighting. One of my first chest freezers had half a dead deer still in it when I got it out of Craigslist.
Did you keep the deer?
It was all like it had been sitting warm for a while, so it was quite nasty.
Are you sure it was a deer?
Oh God! Yeah, Forensic Files wasn't around back then.
It's funny because I have 2 kegerators. One of them mostly stores beer, but they both of them basically just have food in them now. It's just that's sort of where we're at right now. But I feel like with something like this, you couldn't do that. You're not going to be like, oh, here's like 4 apples in this kegerator because I have other kegs. Like it's never going to be overrun. Where can you get it? Is that a more beer thing? Like, can you buy it at more beer? Okay.
Yeah, and then we sell these really high-end, like, nice ones that are all stainless. I mean, I say all stainless. I mean, all stainless. Interiors, the floor of them, everything is stainless.
Does the other ones, or the other one, the entry level, I guess, does that have stainless on it, too? It sounds like it does somewhere.
It has some, like, stainless. I'm going to check real quick. I think the floor is stainless, which is really nice.
Yeah.
But the rest of it is plastic, and then the door is, like, a stainless look to it.
Okay. And the faucets and stuff?
Oh, yeah. Those are all the nice inner tap, forward ceiling faucets and everything.
See, and that's another thing, too, man. I remember when forward ceiling faucets sort of like hit the homebrew market. It was like it was a big deal.
I mean, just talk about, remember when you used to go to a tap and you'd pull on it and it'd just be like sticking and you don't know how much, like, I'm just going to wrench this thing and rip things apart to get it.
Yeah.
And then you're just thinking how nasty that like open air spot in the front of that faucet is just sitting there.
Well, and
flies. And
it's like, I never really knew that until the forward ceiling faucet sort of came and they shone a light on it and you're actually like cleaning. You're like, oh, okay. Cause I've snapped that bar before because it was just brass, I'm not super strong, but like sticky beer has a pretty, a tensile strength, I guess. I don't know.
It's sugar. I mean, essentially, it's drying sugar. And so I don't know if you remember this, but we used to sell a replacement. I forget what that piece is called, the lever. Mm-hmm. We used to sell a replacement that was made of stainless.
That's right.
So that it wouldn't snap on you.
So you just bend your faucet frame instead of that.
No, you'd rip the refrigerator door usually.
That's true. Well, that sounds cool, man. There you go. High-end homebrew. So we can
high-end homebrew for a low cost.
That's right. Yeah, and that's really what it is, man. High-end homebrew, some good innovation coming out of there too. So anybody looking to get back into homebrewing, which you should, honestly, because it's a lot of fun. Hopefully we gave you a couple ideas, a couple two-tray ideas, or if you're looking at upgrading, prices are not as bad as they were. If you've been around this homebrew for a while, you're probably like me and you think that everything that says the word stainless in it is going to automatically be just out of your price range. But I think a lot of things have changed in addition to the new products coming out. So definitely check it out. Chris, thanks, man. I'm glad you got your heart rate down from your Whitney hike. I'm glad it was successful. And I'm glad you made some drinkable beer. I'm assuming it's drinkable, right?
Absolutely drinkable. I mean, I'm not going to call it the best beer I've ever made, but quite drinkable.
Okay, good. And then you did also say that you guys are putting more videos on your YouTube channel.
Yes.
Okay. What kind of stuff you guys have over there?
Naked shows.
Nice, dude. Feet only all the time.
Definitely trying to work on, and this is kind of an intro. Like this is hopefully kind of getting to know Olin and I a little bit better, because we try to do talks like every time we camped. We sat down and talked, and just to get to know our history a little better, get to know some more employees, maybe have some more technical stuff with Colin and Vito, but mostly products. I mean, I'll be honest, it's mostly about product launches and releases, and there's so much more you can see in a video than still pictures.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Well, and that's where all the information is. That's where people are going first.
Yeah.
Is you're watching a video. I know every time I Google like how to do something or even information on stuff, it's just, I mean, of course it's Google. They're going to throw YouTube at you first, but like the first 5 results are always videos.
Well,
and I don't want to do it.
This generation of kids growing up now, and I didn't get it when my kids were, 3 or so or 4, but nowadays it's YouTube. And it's funny. It's like, I only use YouTube to learn how to fix the car or the fridge. Like, I didn't know we use YouTube for entertainment. That's weird to me.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. Like on my Disney podcast, Ears Up, podcast.com, everybody. I'll ask like my friends, like, oh yeah, who should we have on? Like, oh, this person's a Disney tuber and a Disney vlogger. This, I'm like, I had no idea for a while those even existed. People just go to the parks and like walk around and like they get 50,000 views. You're like, how?
Well, I hate to admit this, but as a treat, I bought my kids Mr. Beast burgers on Saturday night.
I don't know what that is.
You don't know what Mr. Beast is? Oh, Alice isn't old enough yet.
No.
He's a famous YouTuber, and he did a very smart thing. He franchised out his burgers. Mm-hmm. So he doesn't own thousands of restaurants, but you can get the app, MrBeastBurger.com, and they have like the main stars, like his and the other guy, and shows you how much I watch. I am now sounding really old.
The other guy, it has that guy in it. He's good.
But then you go to pick it up thinking you're going to like show up to a McDonald's or whatnot. No, it's a boba tea place on Clayton Boulevard, who just pays his license fee, and you can charge outrageous amounts of money for a hamburger, and I'm sure they get a cut. They charge the base part, and he probably just gets a royalty for it.
Dude, people who have figured out how to game the system are just, that's genius to me.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Thanks a lot for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much to our sponsor, More Beer. Go to morebeer.com, of course. And everybody else you heard throughout this show, we really appreciate it. Thanks for tuning in, guys. And until next time, we'll see you later.
JP's an asshole. Justin's a nice guy and winning the race. JP does great as his charity case.